Get up, old man, that bench is for community members, not squatters. That's what she snapped. HOA president, manicured nails, designer sunglasses. She didn't care that he wore an old army jacket or that his cane shook in the wind. But 5 minutes later, a black SUV with city flags rolled up when the mayor stepped out. She didn't ask questions. She walked directly to him, placed a hand on his shoulder, then turned to the woman and said, "Apologize. That's his bench. If you believe some seats are earned," claimed. Comment on or below. Thomas Rourke, 78, was a retired infantryman, Silver Star recipient, 2 deployments. Purple Heart, the kind of man who spoke little about what he'd seen, but carried it all in the lines of his face. He'd helped fundraise the very memorial park. He now visited every Thursday morning. Rain or shine, his arthritic knees protested the walk. But he never missed, not once in 15 years. He lost his best friend Daniel Knox in Vietnam, June 1968. The bench had both their names etched in brass, a tribute to fallen brothers and those who carried their memory home. That morning was crisp autumn leaves. Swirling, Thomas brought his thermos of black coffee and an old creased photograph. He sat quietly as he always did, remembering the photo. Showed 2 young men, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling despite the mud and exhaustion etched on their faces. 2 days before Daniel stepped on the mine. Then she arrived, Vanessa Wilkes, HOA president of the new luxury development, adjacent to the memorial, new to the area, loud, impatient with the conviction that rules were more important than their purpose. "This is private property now," she snapped, clipboard in hand. "We've got an HOA autumn social. You'll need to leave." Thomas simply nodded, took a deep breath that pained his chest. "I'll be gone in a minute, ma'am. Just paying respects." "No, now." Her voice rose sharper than necessary. She waved over a groundskeeper. "Remove him if he doesn't stand. We have decorations to place." Passers-by slowed, uncomfortable with the scene unfolding. A child tugged his father's sleeve. "Why are they yelling at the old soldier?" The father hushed him, embarrassed, but unwilling to intervene. Vanessa's phone appeared in her manicured hand. "Security is on speed dial. This isn't a public park anymore. The development has rights." Thomas' hands shaking slightly, a reach for his cane. He stood slowly, joints protesting each inch, placing the photo gently on the bench, before straightening his back with military precision despite the pain. "Daniel would understand," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "He always said private property matters." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "I don't care who Daniel is. The social starts in 20 minutes, and your loitering is creating an eyesore." Thomas's weathered fingers traced the brass plaque. "Thomas Rourke and Charles Weston, brothers in arms, 1968. "May I at least take the plaque with me?" he asked quietly. "Since the bench isn't ours anymore." "Absolutely not," she replied. "It's part of the amenities listed in our brochure. Vintage decor, the history adds charm." Thomas's shoulders slumped, but his eyes remained dry. He'd shed his tears decades ago in a jungle thousands of miles away. This was just another loss to bear. A bystander quietly recorded the scene on her phone. "You're kicking out a veteran from a bench with his name on it." "Don't be dramatic," Vanessa hissed, glasses sliding down her nose. "He's not anybody important, just an old man who doesn't understand how property transitions work. These rules exist for a reason." But someone had recognized Thomas, the groundskeeper, Derek, who'd served 3 years in the National Guard. He'd heard the stories about the memorial's creation, about the blood and sweat that went into preserving this piece of memory. Derek stepped away from his cart of decorations and made a quiet phone call, speaking in urgent, hushed tones. Within 5 minutes, a police officer pulled up, only to be waved away impatiently by Vanessa. "He's not under arrest, just trespassing. We'll handle it internally." The officer glanced at Thomas's military jacket, the ribbon still perfectly aligned after all these years. Recognition flickered in his eyes, but he retreated to his cruiser. Rules were rules. Thomas, leaning heavily on his cane, sat back down on the bench. His voice, normally soft, carried the steel forged in combat. "Let me have 5 minutes. He pleaded. "Just 5 minutes for Daniel." Vanessa checked her diamond-studded watch. "No one cares. Daniel, this is about regulations and schedules. Our members paid good money for this space." "So did Daniel," Thomas whispered. "Paid everything he had." That's when the black SUV pulled up, city seal emblazoned on the door, official plates. The nervous groundskeeper exhaled in relief. Out stepped Mayor Elaine Blake, veteran advocate, former military lawyer, daughter of a Vietnam vet who never came home. She scanned the scene, taking in the gathering crowd, the seated elderly man, the impatient HOA president. "Which one of you removed this man from his bench?" she asked, her voice cold as January steel. Vanessa raised her hand, confidence unwavering. "He was loitering." This is private community space now. We have permits." The mayor didn't respond immediately. She turned to Thomas instead. Sergeant Rourke. Thomas nodded slowly, struggling to rise. "Yes, ma'am." She saluted him, crisp, perfect, respectful, in full view of everyone gathered, and then she said 5 words that cut through the morning air. "This bench has his blood." Confusion crossed Vanessa's face. "I don't understand." Mayor Blake turned, eyes flashing. The brass plaque was melted down from shell casings. "He brought back his blood is literally in that metal. His sweat built this memorial when the city couldn't afford it." She held up a document from her portfolio. "And this land was deeded to the city as a permanent memorial. Your development's purchase doesn't include this specific parcel." Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. "Our lawyers assured us." "Your lawyers missed something," the mayor interrupted. "Something important. The deed specifically states this memorial bench cannot be moved, altered, or restricted from public access ever." Whispers rippled through the growing crowd. Phones captured every moment. Thomas sat silently, eyes fixed on Daniel's photograph. "But our autumn social," Vanessa began, "will need to be relocated." Mayor Blake finished firmly. "I suggest the gazebo by the duck pond. It's lovely this time of year." Derek, the groundskeeper, began quietly removing the decorations from around the bench. 2 other workers followed his lead. Vanessa's face flushed crimson. "I'll be speaking to your office about this. We have rights, we have process." "So does he," the mayor replied, nodding toward Thomas. "Rights earned in blood, process paid for in sacrifice." She then addressed the crowd directly. "This isn't about rules, it's about remembering who we are and what matters. Some debts can never be repaid, but they should at minimum be remembered." Thomas finally spoke, his voice steady despite his trembling hands. "I don't want to cause trouble, just wanted to sit with Daniel a while." The mayor knelt beside him, eye to eye. "No trouble, Sergeant. You're exactly where you belong. If you believe true honor never fades, subscribe to Steelheart Stories now." Mayor Blake addressed the now substantial crowd. "That this man raised the first dollar to build this memorial when no one else would. He buried 5 brothers from his unit. And this bench, this exact spot, is where we honor them every Veterans Day for 15 years. Vanessa tried to interrupt, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "But the HOA has jurisdiction and permits." "No." "How about?" Blake cut in firmly. "The city owns this land in perpetuity and we protect its legacy. What you have is landscaping rights to the surrounding area, not ownership of the memorial itself." A city staffer in a crisp suit handed Vanessa a letter. "Official notice of review regarding the development's permit boundaries and HOA conduct." Vanessa's voice faltered as reality sank in. "I didn't know the documentation was unclear." "That's the problem," the mayor said, not unkindly. "You didn't ask, you didn't look at the plaque and wonder who Thomas and Daniel were. You saw an old man and assumed he didn't belong." The crowd had grown to nearly 50 people now. Neighbors, curious passers-by, even 2 veterans in their service caps who had heard the commotion and come to investigate. That afternoon, Vanessa was removed from her position as HOA president pending investigation into permit violations and conduct unbecoming leadership. The video of the incident had gone viral, over 2 million views in 24 hours. Thousands commented in outrage, sharing stories of other memorials threatened by development and gentrification. Veterans groups across the state Thomas honorary recognition donations poured in to restore the aging memorial's pathways and lighting. A local mason volunteered to clean and reseal the weathered brass plaque that had begun to tarnish with time, and the city council passed an emergency motion. Thomas's bench would be officially engraved in stone beneath the brass plate, and a small garden of remembrance added behind it. 3 days later, Thomas returned with flowers for Daniel. He found a small mountain of tributes already there. Flags, notes, flowers, even military medals left by anonymous veterans who'd seen the story remembered their own. Daniel's, the groundskeeper Derek, had been reinstated with a promotion to memorial caretaker. He greeted Thomas with coffee made just the way he liked it. "They can't take it back," Derek assured him. "Mayor made sure it's protected forever now." Thomas nodded, tears finally breaking through decades of stoic restraint. "Daniel would have found this all ridiculous, all this fuss over a bench. He'd say." Derek smiled. "Not just a bench, is it?" "No," Thomas agreed. "Not just a bench." Surprisingly, it was Vanessa who appeared next, without her clipboard or designer sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her manner subdued. "Mr. Rourke," she began hesitantly, "I've come to apologize, not because I have to, though the HOA board has demanded it, but because I should." Thomas gestured to the space beside him. "Have a seat." She sat awkwardly, hands folded in her lap. "My father was in Vietnam too. He never spoke about it. Died when I was young." Thomas nodded. "Many didn't speak of it. Too heavy to carry, too heavy to put down." "I didn't see your name on the plaque," she admitted. "I didn't really look." "Most don't," Thomas replied. "That's why we need memorials, to make us look by week's end." Story had traveled across the country. Vanessa had resigned completely. but not before establishing a scholarship fund for veterans' children in the community. She named it after Daniel. The development's architectural committee approached the mayor with a revised plan, redirecting their autumn social budget to restoration of the entire memorial park instead. What began as confrontation had transformed into conversation, painful but necessary, about what we choose to remember and what we allow to fade. Thomas found himself surrounded by people who now knew Daniel's name, who asked about him, wanted to hear the stories of the man who never came home. Tell us about him, they asked, and for the first time in decades, Thomas did. 1 week later, Thomas returned to the bench, not to protest, not for attention, just him, Daniel's photo and a folded flag. He now carried with pride as he sat. Family lit by and nodded. Some saluted. A group of ROTC cadets came by, one leaving a small flower beside the plaque. The bench had been carefully cleaned, the brass gleaming in the autumn sun. The garden behind it was taking shape, simple, dignified, with perennials that would return year after year. Just as Thomas did that Sunday, the mayor unveiled a new addition, a bronze plaque behind the bench that read, "To those who gave even when no one asked, this seat belongs to the memory of sacrifice and the men who carried it." Children from the local elementary school had written letters to Mr. Thomas and Miss Daniel, which were laminated and bound in a book kept in a small weatherproof box beside the bench. Visitors could read them or leave their own note. Vanessa had moved to another neighborhood quietly, but before leaving she left her father's service medal in the collection box, with it a note. "I never knew him. Thank you for helping me see him." The developers had redesigned their community entrance to direct visitors past the memorial rather than away from it. Historic significance became their new selling point, with a percentage of HOA fees now permanently allocated to its upkeep. Thomas, he still visits rain or shine every Thursday morning, but now no one asked him to leave. Some sit beside him, some just listen to his stories, some bring coffee and sit in companionable silence. The bench that almost disappeared has become the heart of the community. New residents are toasted. Story during orientation. School groups make field trips to learn about Daniel, about Thomas, about memory and sacrifice. Unintended consequence. Property values rose. The homes with views of the memorial became the most desirable, not because of luxury or exclusivity, but because of meaning. Option. Story. On Veterans Day, hundreds gathered. Thomas in his dress uniform, for the first time in decades, sat with the mayor on one side and an empty space for Daniel on the other. "I won't be here forever," he told the assembled crowd, "but Daniel will, and so will this bench. Remember why it matters, not just that it does." Child approached with a handmade card. "Is this where heroes sit?" she asked it. Thomas smiled gently. "No, honey, heroes don't come home. This is where those who remember them sit." As a ceremony ended, and people drifted away, Thomas remained, hand resting on the spot where Daniel's name was etched in brass. Some stories end, some benches decay, but memory properly tended outlast them all. Subscribe to Steelheart Stories, where forgotten heroes finally get remembered.